Muted.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Hampton from the Employers Association. Welcome to our briefing about certification options. I'm happy you could join us, and we are going to keep you all on mute this morning while I go through the presentation, and then at the end we will have time for questions. Because we know people are in different settings and we're recording this for future use, we'll have you send your questions by chat, so you'll be able to use your keyboard and send your question, and we'll answer those then. But happy to have you with us this morning. I do believe that we have a mix of members and non-members who are with us. So those of you who may not be very familiar with the Employers Association, just very briefly, our mission, our purpose is to help build great employers, and primarily it's around helping you retain and engage your best talent, protecting your organization from an HR and compliance standpoint, and help you be an employer of choice, a great place to work. And all of our services and training fall into several buckets I'll show you in a moment. But we are a business association. We're part of a larger network of associations around the country. We have about 950 member companies. They all have either a presence in Charlotte or they're headquartered in Charlotte, but they may have sites across the country. We've been around for over 50 years, and so we have a lot of HR expertise. And as I mentioned, our services fall into several buckets, primarily HR and compliance, training, organizational development and assessments, benchmark surveys and compensation, and employee benefits. So our purpose here today, though, is to talk about certification. So this falls under our training and HR services. But we're going to talk a little bit about today the PHR, SPHR, and aPHR, which is new. Those are 3 certifications that are offered by the HR Certification Institute. I will briefly talk about the SHRM certification. Some of you may be familiar with those, some of you may not. And then I'll talk about some options that are available that are not certifications but certificate programs. So our goal today is to really help you understand more about these various educational options. What do they mean? Who are the people who offer them? Why should I be interested? And then for those of you who may be considering which level of certification is correct for you, I'll be telling you a little bit more about the differences between those different certifications, hopefully helping you choose what's really best for you. And as I said, you'll be able to send some questions in at the end of the presentation. You're also welcome to call us or email us afterward if you think of things as you're making this decision. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the study courses that we offer here at the Employers Association. So first we're going to start out with the 2 most popular certifications, the PHR and SPHR. These are professional designations offered by the HR Certification Institute, HRCI for short. They have been around for over 30 years offering these certifications. They're over nearly 150,000 people around the world have one of their designations. And they offer more than just the PHR, SPHR, but those are the 2 most popular, been around for a long time. So they present themselves as truly the gold standard when it comes to certification. So we've been working with them in partnership for over 20 years to offer classes here. There are certain eligibility requirements that you must meet, so we'll be sharing those with you so that you can make sure that you're truly eligible if those interest you. And you may find today, well, maybe I'm not eligible for those, but I may be eligible for the aPHR, or maybe I want to take the SHRM one, so we'll talk about that. In order to get these designations, basically all you have to do is meet the requirements and pass a test. So there is a certification exam, and I'm going to tell you more details about those. But it's passing a test on a certain day, and there are multiple versions, which I'll talk about. So one of the bigger questions that we get is, do I really need certification, and is that important? Are employers looking for that? And I will tell you it varies widely. So it does depend on what your ultimate goal is. How many years of experience do you have? What role are you in currently? What career plans do you have? How many different kinds of roles have you been in, et cetera? What is your current role? What is your scope, et cetera? And which certification is really right for you? So it may be a personal goal that you have. You know other people who have their PHR, SPHR, and it's a personal goal. That's great. I would say go for it. There may be others of you who say, I just really need to know more about practical HR. There may be some other classes that would be more suited for you if you don't need to know the entire body of knowledge that is HR and you're not even sure yet career-wise if you want to move up the ladder in the role of HR. So there are a lot of considerations that you need to think about as you're deciding, do I want to do it? It's a very big commitment. The exams are very tough. So I do try to walk people through, what are you really trying to accomplish? Sometimes I'll hear from people, well, my boss has their SPHR, so I think I need to get my PHR. That may be the case. Or other people who say, I'm in a job search mode and people are asking me, do I have my PHR or my SPHR? So those are things that you want to consider. I've had a few people who say, well, I'm going to retire in 2 years. Do I really need to do this? And my answer is, it depends. If you're going to be in a job search mode or it's important for you to have clout within your organization, maybe it's worth it to you, but maybe it's not. And that is something to consider. We do have some of our members who focus internally on the importance of education and certification. So if you work maybe in a medical practice and you're working with MDs, they may like to see some letters after your name to give you clout of, I know what I'm doing when it comes to HR. Sometimes people who work with engineers or architects may really place a lot of value on certification. So think about your company, think about your role, think about your career plans, and that will hopefully help you determine what would be right for you. So to tell you a little bit about the PHR and SPHR, both of those exams are 3 hours. There are 175 questions. However, only 150 count, and sometimes people are puzzled about that. Every time that they have a testing opportunity, they are pre-testing some questions for future exam use. So they throw in some test questions to figure out, are these going to be good questions for the future or not, so they don't count. When you take the exam, though, you will not be able to tell, and so you won't know which ones are test questions and which ones are real questions, but you just need to know that in reality, you have some that you can miss and it won't even matter. So 150 questions count. There's a minimum passing score and then a maximum if anybody had a perfect score, which would be rare, but you have to achieve at least 500. All of the questions are multiple choice, so that's really good news. You don't have to write any essays. You don't have to do anything that's more difficult than picking the best answer out of 4 answer choices, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's good news in general that you do want to know it's multiple choice. It is all computer-based, so no more filling out the bubble with your number 2 pencil. It's all electronic. And so you go through a third party, you go to the HRCI website, and you register to take the exam, and then you get to pick your date. There are different prometric testing centers around town, and those centers offer tests of all kinds. And so you may go in on a Saturday morning to take the PHR, and you may be sitting right next to somebody who's taking a nursing certification exam or a CPA exam. It's all different kinds of exams. And part of what's even more interesting is you may go in with a colleague and say, let's go take our exams on the same day at the same place at the same time. Your colleague sitting right next to you may be taking a different version of the PHR or SPHR exam. They have multiple versions because they want to make sure it's not easy for people to cheat. And so the good news is, though, they weight those. And so you may find that your exam may have been tougher or it may not be tougher, but there are different versions, but they weight that according to the scores that people achieve over time. So that's good news. The new aPHR, I'm going to weave that into the presentation today. That is a new certification, and I'll explain a little bit more about that and how that came about. It's a little bit shorter, so 2 hours and 15 minutes. Fewer questions, 125, and again, 25 are test questions that they're pre-testing, so they don't count. Also, all multiple choice, also electronic based. So these multiple choice questions, and this is true for the aPHR as well, you'll have a question and 4 alternatives to choose from. And 3 of the alternatives are called distractors. Sometimes you may be able to see one that clearly is not the answer. You can say, mark it out. But what happens frequently is that 2 out of the 4 choices may be viable answers. And so that's what's really hard, is trying to pick out between those 2 options that you think, well, those are both pretty good answers to that question. Which one is the best question according to HRCI? So you got to think in terms of all companies, all different size companies, all industries. What is the best book answer to that question? And it may not be the practical answer at your company. Here's what we would really do. It is according to the body of knowledge and competencies that is the world of HR. What is the best answer? So that is the most difficult part for a lot of people. And you'll find that those who choose to go the more senior route for the SPHR, the senior professional exam, even more tough, more questions like that, where you've got 2 pretty good answers. What is the best answer to that question? So this just walks you through one good example of, there's the STEM, which is the question. There are 4 answer choices, 3 of them are distractors. I've heard about affirmative action. I know that employment testing is something that you have to be worried about discrimination, but the best answer to that is what is prohibited is D, race norming. All right, now let's talk a little bit about eligibility requirements. So you must meet these basic eligibility requirements, and it's based on a combination of education and your experience. One really important point here, we've put in bold the word professional. For PHR and SPHR, when they say demonstrated professional HR experience, they are talking about exempt level experience. So that is one big differentiator, is to be eligible for the exams, you must be doing exempt level work. Now I will say that if your company has you classified as non-exempt from overtime, but you're doing exempt level work, you can still qualify to take the exam. But what happens probably more frequently is some employers may have you designated as exempt incorrectly, and your work is truly non-exempt, or maybe it's a blend and it's a gray area. You truly have to be doing exempt level work at this number of years of experience in order to qualify. People will sometimes ask, well, how do they know? Or are they going to audit me? So they may audit you, and that's where it becomes important. When you do sign up to take the exam, there'll be an opportunity for you to select various job codes, various job titles, and they are going to ask you to certify that you have the correct number of exempt level years of experience. So that is where you may have a concern, is if you do get audited, you would need to be able to prove that. They may ask you for a job description. They may ask you to follow up with information from your company that certifies that you're exempt, et cetera, et cetera. So that is something you have to take on a case-by-case basis and determine, if you were audited, would you be able to truly show that you have been doing exempt level work for this number of years? And most commonly what we find are the second bullet point, people that have a bachelor's degree, you need 2 years for the PHR, and then 5 years for the SPHR, and then depending on if you do or don't, or have a master's, a little bit more, a little bit less. What I do also like to emphasize here is that in our minds, these are minimum years of experience that you need to take these exams. Again, they are very difficult exams, so the more experience that you have in the world of HR, the more likely it is that you will be able to pass. So in reality, when people say, what do you really think? We'll say, we think that for the PHR, you really need at least 4 years of exempt level experience. And for the SPHR, you really need 7 years at least of exempt level experience. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. For the aPHR, which is the new certification, this is truly entry level. And so you do not have to have any HR experience to take this exam. They do require that you have a high school diploma or equivalent. So that is truly the only eligibility requirement for the aPHR. And that is because a lot of people who are non-exempt wanted to get a certification. So this is HRCI's answer to that. All right, tell you a little bit more about the types of exam questions, and this applies to the PHR and SPHR. There are basic knowledge comprehension questions, and as you see at the bottom on the chart, 25% of the PHR exam are basic knowledge and facts, 15% for the SPHR. So those are where we're going to teach you, if you come to our study course, a whole lot of facts and figures about a whole lot of different laws, etc. And you have to understand those concepts and answer questions about them and recall facts. The more difficult type, number 2, would be application and problem-solving questions, 50-50 PHR, SPHR. So being able to take a concept and then answer a real-world scenario about that question. And then number 3, getting into synthesis and evaluation, you'll see that that's 35% of the SPHR exam, 25% for the PHR. Those are truly the most difficult types of questions where you're having to take information and make judgment calls. So taking a concept, maybe something like validity and reliability. We talk about that in several different books of the content. And then they give you a scenario question. They have some distractor answer choices. You have to make a really good judgment call. And what we like to emphasize is if you take a study course, ours or anywhere, you're going to learn a lot about number 1 and 2. Basic knowledge, some of the application of the different laws and different concepts, but it is very difficult for us to teach you how to do number 3. That comes with business experience, seasoning, and people who are fortunate to have a lot of common sense. So I wish I could have a magic pill to teach people common sense or a magic pill to give you business seasoning, but that truly comes from experience. So that's part of why we really emphasize that you have a lot of experience before you take that leap to take the SPHR level exam. All right, this tells you a little bit more about the specific content of the PHR and SPHR, and in a moment we'll look at the aPHR. So there are 6 books for the PHR and SPHR, and if you look on the middle columns there, it tells you what % of the PHR books an exam, and then the 2 right columns are the SPHR. So you see right there, number 1, business management and strategy. A lot more questions on the SPHR exam. 30% of the exam is about business management and strategy. So things such as if you are part of the C-suite at your company, you're part of the leadership team, and you've been involved in setting the vision and the mission for the company, setting up the strategic goals, and then designing how to implement the HR goals that meet the business strategy. Those are the kinds of things that are covered with business management and strategy. It talks a little bit about things like accounting and finance and marketing and operations. So some things that if you don't have that seasoning and experience, you may have never had much exposure to it. So much lower % for the PHR. The second book is Workforce Planning and Employment. So that's hiring and the laws that are around recruiting and hiring. A lot more common that people are familiar with those concepts, so 24% PHR, 17% on the SPHR. The third book they call Human Resource Development. You may call that at your company Training and Development, and you may also, if you're a really large company, have an Organizational Development Department. That is book 3. About 18% PHR and 19% for the SPHR. And then the next one is Comp and Benefits, fairly self-explanatory, 19% PHR, 13% for SPHR. The next book is Employee and Labor Relations, 20% of the PHR, 14% for SPHR. I dare say that most of you have had some experience with employee relations, dealing with common employee questions and issues, or some things that happen between teammates where they're not getting along, things of that nature. So those questions are usually fairly straightforward for folks, but the labor relations piece is something that we find in our area. People don't have much experience with that. So North Carolina and South Carolina are 2 of the least unionized states in the country. So we find that most of our participants don't have a lot of experience with unions or laborers and the various laws that go around that. So that could be a challenging area, but we do our best to help you understand and prepare for that. And then finally, risk management. In your team, you may call it safety, but it's things such as workers' comp, OSHA, et cetera, 8% and 7%. So we don't spend nearly the same amount of time on those, but if that is your area of expertise, then you will find that easy. All right, next with the aPHR, quite different if you see how things are weighted here. HR operations. So instead of the first book being about strategy and business, it's really more about the basics of running an HR department. So 38% of the exam is some of the basic HR, how to run an HR department, things like payroll, HR administration, et cetera. And then you'll learn a little bit less, but still important, about recruitment and selection, comp and benefits, HR development. Employee relations is the second highest category here because that is something that's most common for HR people to deal with, and then a much smaller section on health and safety for this group as well. So just a little bit different content because it is a more entry-level exam. All right, next let's talk a little bit about the new SHRM certifications. And I found that with our audiences, sometimes people are very familiar with this story and sometimes people don't know about this. So many years ago, HRCI and SHRM worked very closely together, but they have always been separate entities. And so a couple years ago, in 2015, SHRM announced that they were going to offer their own certifications. So there's something called the SHRM Certified Professional, SHRM CP, and the SHRM Senior Certified Professional, the SHRM SCP. So we will talk a little bit about those, and do you need to get your PHR or your SCP or your CP? Should you get your SPHR or your SCP? So people say, well, why are they doing this? What happened? So they were in the same building in Washington, D.C., working quite closely together and getting along. And then apparently a couple years ago, there was some kind of split that happened or some kind of discord. I laugh sometimes and say they were married and they got divorced. So what happened years ago is HRCI offered the exams and the accreditation, so they were the independent third party offering the credentials, and SHRM offered the study materials. So HRCI did the test, SHRM did the study materials, they co-marketed, they worked side by side, everything was going along smoothly. But there were some areas where they had disagreement, and so they decided to part ways. And so SHRM decided they would offer their own certifications. And then they just created a new accreditation board called the SHRM Certification Board to do that. So now on this chart, you will see a comparison between the two organizations and the various accreditations that they offer. So HRCI offers the PHR, SPHR, and a whole bunch of other ones listed under there, which I'll tell you about later. And then SHRM offers the CP and the SCP. As you'll see there, very similar number of questions. SHRM does the same thing with pre-test test questions. They're about the same length. They are both accredited now. SHRM just received accreditation last fall, a couple months ago, but they are both now accredited, but they are by different accrediting bodies. And then here's the main distinguisher here. For HRCI, you must be exempt for the PHR and SPHR. For the SHRM, you do not have to be exempt. And so then what happened? HRCI decided to offer the aPHR, I think as part of their response to that of, yes, we want people who are not exempt to be eligible for a certification, but we think that the PHR, SPHR, and I'm speaking for HRCI, they think that that's the gold standard, and that non-exempt folks should not be able to get that because you need to be exempt. So their answer to that was to now offer the aPHR, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a moment. So that's what we are gathering from how things evolved. The very same recertification requirements, so once you do obtain any of these different designations, you do have to recertify every 3 years. So you need 60 hours, and you can get that through continuing education. You can get some of it through ongoing professional experience, on-the-job experience. If you teach any classes, you can get credit for that, etc. And then some great news for those of you who are employed by TEA member companies, you get up to 12 free hours of recertification credit just for being employed by a TEA member. So if your company is a member of the Employers Association TEA, we consider you as an individual member being employed by that member company. And that is true for those of you who may work for a large company. If you have a bunch of people there who have a PHR, SPHR, or eventually an aPHR, you get free credit just for being employed by one of our members. And then for SHRM, if you belong to a SHRM chapter, you get a certain number of free hours for being a SHRM member if you do recertification there. Next, the cost is fairly similar. SHRM made theirs a little bit less expensive, I think, to help entice people to consider them, but really it's not a big difference. And then again, there you'll see a little asterisk. If you are employed by a member company, you get a $50 exam discount for the PHR, SPHR, and aPHR. Prep materials, what HRCI had really emphasized when SHRM first came out with their new certifications is that in order to really be, again, the gold standard, the entity that does the certifying, in their mind, should not create their own study materials. It's almost like, you know, the wolf being in the hen house, if you will. So they do not create study materials. They refer people to various third parties for that, which is a little bit of a distinction where SHRM, they already had their own learning materials, because that's what they used to sell to HRCI. So they are offering their own study materials for their own accreditation. But they did get accredited, so maybe that's fine. And then next, another big difference is with the testing window. Something new that HRCI started doing in November was you can take the test any day of the year that you can find a testing center that's open. So once you do decide if you want to take one of these certification study courses or do it on your own, you can sign up through Prometrics and take the test any day of the year. SHRM is doing what used to be done by HRCI. There are testing windows, and so each year they have usually at least 2, sometimes 3 testing windows that are open. So you would want to take a study course, you know, leading up to one of those testing windows, and then take your exam and sign up sometime between the dates that are available. So with HRCI, that very last couple of rows there, you can apply anytime to take the exam. You just got to pick a date. But for SHRM, there are deadlines that lead up to those testing windows. So there's a regular deadline for the next one for March 24th, and then you can apply late, but they charge you a little bit more. You can decide by April 14th, and then sign up to take it sometime between May and July. All right. As I mentioned, there are other certification options, and I find that sometimes the audience is not aware that there are tons of different certifications available. So depending on, again, where you are in your career, what role you're in, and where you want to go in the future, it's not all about only the PHR, SPHR. There is the new aPHR. A little bit more information there. Again, I think that was their answer to SHRM allowing people to take their certification when they're non-exempt. We've got this new aPHR available. So it might be a recent graduate. It could be somebody who is in a professional role, but they're designated as non-exempt. They can take this one as a starting point. It might be people who are coming back from the military, so they're transitioning to civilian life. They had some HR experience in the military, but it is run a little bit differently in the civilian world, so it's a great way for them to segue into the civilian world and then get some credentials for their resume. And then other people, you may have 20 years of experience in accounting, and you decide, I want to learn more about HR. The aPHR might be a great entry-level certification for you. And then there are these other designations. So GPHR is the global PHR. So that is something for people who may have, you may work for a company that has operations in other countries. It talks about global HR practices and global HR laws. Next, you'll see the PHR with a little I and SPHR with a little I. Those are the international designations, and so that's usually for people who are working in a foreign country because they want to get a designation, but they don't know U.S. employment law. So those are designed for those folks. And then the PHR and SPHR with the little CA after that, that stands for California. California has so many different state-specific employment laws, they created a designation just for that. So if you are working for an employer here in North Carolina, but you do have a California site, at some point you may want to get a designation and understand more about California employment law by studying for that. If you work for a public sector employer, a town or a county or a city, you may look into the IPMA. If you love compensation and benefits, there are a couple of options. World at Work and the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans offer multiple designations. The ones we probably see most commonly are the CCP, that's the Certified Compensation Professional, and then the next bullet point, the CEBS, the Certified Employee Benefits Specialist. Those are very tough exams as well, a lot of preparation required for that, but if you want to do a career in comp and benefits or you're in the midst of that, those are designations I would recommend you investigate. And then last but not least, the American Society for Talent Development, used to be ASTD, American Society for Training and Development. They have a couple of different designations. So if you love training or you love organizational development, then those are certifications you may want to investigate. Next, we talk a little bit about certificate programs. And so certifications are programs where there is a third party that creates an exam and their accrediting body. Anybody that provides education can offer a certificate program. So we offer several here at the Employers Association. Various colleges and universities have certificate programs, and they can be valuable. And so if somebody says, I really don't want to learn the entire body of knowledge that is human resources, you know, I really just want to know how to run an HR department, or I really want to know practical benefits, then it may be that a certificate program would be a better option for you. So you don't need a full-blown designation. You just may need some practical training on how to be better at HR, benefits, etc. I would recommend that you investigate a certificate program. So these are some of the offerings that we have coming up in 2017 here at the Employers Association, but you may be an alumni or alumna of various colleges and universities, and they may offer something for you as well. We are excited for 2017. We've been doing a full-blown HR certificate program for several years now. We are expanding that to all those bullet points that you see there. So if you've never taken the HR Professional Certificate Series, you may want to take some of these or all of these, be watching your newsletter. If you're a member, watching your email, we'll be telling you more about those. Another very popular series has been our Employment Law Certificate Series. Ogletree Deakins is a premier employment and labor law firm, so they do that with us. And then Foundations of HR, if there are some of you there in the audience who are relatively new to HR, or you really need to know more about the practical basics of HR, our Foundations class, Foundations of HR, is really our entry-level course, and it is great just to give you some of that practical knowledge, but not nearly as in-depth or comprehensive as those certification offerings. So hopefully that helps you understand that there are various options depending on what you want to learn. So whether or not you take a study course here at the Employers Association, or if you choose to look at other options, I wanted to give you some tips on questions that you need to ask. So walk with me around the circle here. At the very top, content from a reputable provider. You definitely want to make sure that whatever study course you're taking, they've got good content. That seems like a no-brainer, but definitely something you want to need to know, or that you want to know, is what materials are you using for the course, and where do they come from? How long have you been using them? What do they look like? You know, ask some questions about that. To the right there next would be, make sure they've got experienced, knowledgeable instructors. So who is it that's teaching this class? One of the first questions I think I would ask if I were in your shoes is, do they have the certifications themselves? So if I'm going to take a PHR study course, do these people have their PHR or their SPHR? That's something that you would want to know. So take a look at that. And then next would be resources and accessibility. So am I going to be able to reach these instructors? So there are some other study course options I'll show you here in a moment, but if I'm taking an online course, am I going to be able to reach the instructor outside of that actual instructional time together? That's something that we do feel like is a real competitive advantage here at TEA, is all of our instructors are internal TEA team members. I am one of those folks, so I am a little biased, of course, but we all wear a lot of different hats, but you can find us. So if you have a question, you come to class on Tuesday night, you've got a question on Wednesday morning, you can get a hold of one of us to help you answer that question. And then if you are with a TEA member, we have some additional resources I'll share with you here shortly. Another really important factor at the bottom of the circle there is I would highly recommend you take a course that is spaced out over time. You'll see here in a minute that one of your options is to take a crash course. We do not recommend that. The body of knowledge that is covered by these exams is really huge and comprehensive, and so taking a 2 or 3 day crash course, it is just not possible for you to learn all of that material in a couple of days. So I know that SHRM used to offer a crash course right before their national conference, and have talked to people who have gone and done that, and it is just virtually impossible to learn all this content in a crash course. So please look for something that's spaced out over time. And then another really important question that you would ask of any entity is, what is your track record? What's your pass rate? Another hint here I would say is, if they say, well, we've got a 100% pass rate, I would probably raise an eyebrow, number one, but then number two, so over what period of time is that? So we have had some people who have advertised they've had a 100% pass rate, but then when we ask the question of, oh, okay, how many people is that and over what period of time? Well, it was last semester. We had 5 people. And I'm not knocking that. That's great. However, how we'd like to market and tell people about our pass rate is it's over 20 years that we've had a pass rate, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. But ask some further questions about what does that really mean, and I'll show you some of the national pass rates here in a moment. And then another question is, do you have the opportunity to take practice tests? That is really important. So wherever you take a study course, you definitely need to take some practice tests, and a couple of reasons why. It gives you some experience with online testing. What's it like to take a test online? It gives you some experience with multiple choice questions. So what is it like to have, one answer I can knock out right away is not correct, but I'm having to choose between those other 3 answer choices. Which one is the best one? So the more you practice, the better you get at that. And then it gives you an opportunity to get a feel for what is it like to have all these questions from these 6 books of body of knowledge jumbled up together. So my first question might be something about employee relations. My next question is about safety. My next question is about training. Your brain has to really refocus and get used to jumping around with different topics. So the more that you practice, the better opportunity for you to be prepared. And that it also gets you a sense of what is it like to sit there in front of the computer for a long period of time and answer a whole bunch of questions. In today's world, we're all on the computer a lot, but we may be looking at Outlook, and then we jump over to do a PowerPoint, then we walk down the hall to answer an employee question. We don't sit very much for 3 hours at a time and answer questions. So it's great for you to practice what is that like. As I mentioned earlier, here are a couple of different options for you. You can do self-study. That is another option that I tell people we really don't recommend. It's very difficult to pass these exams and do this through self-study. I've known a couple of people who had been successful at that. It has been people who are very seasoned, who've been exposed to all these different areas of HR. They're extremely structured, extremely disciplined in order to be able to do that. Most people, that is pretty tough to do. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what we recommend from a study course standpoint. Another great option is a prep study course. I highly recommend you take a study course somewhere. We'd love to have you here at the Employers Association, but if you can't make ours, please take a study course somewhere. And as I already discussed, really don't recommend the crash course. And there again, you see the 6 books in the PHR and SPHR body of knowledge. If I had a visual in front of me, you'd see a big stack about, probably 8 inches high of these books that you have to read. Let me tell you about those, describe those for you verbally. Each book is usually about 150 to 180 pages. They are small, single-size font, not a lot of pictures. So you have a lot to read to get through these 6 bodies of knowledge. People who take our course, we actually recommend that you read the 6 books twice. So let's round up the numbers. 6 books, let's just say 200 pages each. That's 1,200 pages times 2, 2,400 pages that you need to read to accomplish all of this. In addition to that, we have what we call study guides as part of our study course, where after you read a book, you go through and answer a whole bunch of questions to help you retain the information. So every week you're going to need to read a book, answer a bunch of questions, and then sometime, during that semester, read the books again and refresh yourself again. This is not a small endeavor. This is not something you can fit into your schedule easily on a Sunday night. This is something that's going to take you hours every week to prepare for. So you need to think about that when you think about, is this the right time in my career and in my life, and what would be the best month for me to take the exam where I can fit this into my life. A little bit more about deadlines. As we talked about with the PHR, SPHR, aPHR, you can take the exam any day. Another new item that they are offering is what we call second chance insurance, and I do laugh about this, of you bet against yourself of, if I think I might not pass, then I'm going to buy this second chance insurance. And what it is a way for HRCI to bundle it, where instead of paying for the exam twice, which is pretty expensive, for a little bit more money, you can buy the second chance insurance, and then if you don't pass, you can go ahead and take it next time, and you've already paid for it. So that really is a personal decision for you to make. How confident are you that you can pass one of these exams, and then will your employer pay for it? If your employer will pay for second chance insurance, I would say I'd recommend it. Go ahead. It's not a huge amount of money versus a large number of people don't pass, so you've already paid for it. There you see the various exam fees ranging from $325 to $475 plus an application fee, and then another little reminder there for you at the bottom that TEA members do get a $50 discount. And even more good news, if you do enroll with one of our classes, every semester we do a drawing, usually about the 3rd night of class, and one lucky person will win a free exam. So that's just part of our partnership with HRCI. A little bit about TEA's class, and I'll tell you about all of them, but first we look at the PHR, SPHR. That is one combined course that we do together because the bulk of the body of knowledge is similar. 12 weeks on Tuesday nights. So you would come here once a week from 5 to 8 p.m. It is a live class, instructor-led. A couple of extra dates, we do a class intro and some test-taking tips the first night from 4 to 5. We ask you to come in a little early. And then we do those test-taking tips again the last night. So we try to help you think through as you're learning how to study, and then again as you get near the exam date that you choose, how to take this test. We'll give you a lot of tips about that. And then we have some fun. We have a midterm Jeopardy game, and then the last night of class we play Jeopardy again. We break out the audience into teams, and you guys play Jeopardy. So we do an actual simulation of the exam. So we run a PowerPoint, we do multiple choice questions, we mix them up by the different books, and we give you a test. It's a great way for you to kind of, again, experience what's it like to take these multiple choice questions, what is it like to jumble up these topics. There is an element of competition because we put you into teams. We have a lot of fun with it, but it's truly a great learning experience, and it helps you know, oh gosh, I really don't know this safety stuff. I better go read that book again, or I'm really struggling with this business management book. I need to really understand this better. So it'll help you know where to study. And then those are the dates we're starting February 21st and going through May 9th, all Tuesday nights. The aPHR course, for those of you who are non-exempt or maybe thinking that's a great entry-level certification to get, that is going to be a much shorter class. It'll be 5 weeks. We are going to do that on Thursday mornings here at TEA, again, live instructor-led, 8:30 to 12:30, starting March 2nd and going through April 6th. We do not currently have a webinar version available. If you do have people that are in remote locations, and that is an option that they need to consider, some of our sister associations are offering that. So send us a quick email or give us a call if that's of interest for someone. We can connect you with those resources. And they do a great job with it, but I will tell you, I think it's much better to be in a live classroom, hearing people's questions, hearing the instructor, watching the PowerPoint, being able to ask questions. But if that truly is the only option available to you, we will connect you with some people who do webinars. All right, a little bit more about our team, and I do tell you already, I am biased because I'm part of the team and I'm proud of our team, but we do really have a team of experts, and they are internal team members here. So we've got over 100 years of experience combined because we've all been seasoned professionals. So we've got Stephanie Dillon, Stephanie Oberg, myself, Kathy Graham, and Kenny Colbert. Those of you who are TA members may already know, some or all of us, but what we do is we divide up the books by where we have areas of expertise. So for example, Stephanie Dillon is one of our HR generalists, HR subject matter expert. She's also been in the recruiting world, so she's going to talk a lot about the hiring, the employment laws around the hiring process. That's her area of expertise. Stephanie Oberg is our internal compensation subject matter expert, so she's going to teach the compensation portion of the study course. I've got a combination HR and training background and have been a seasoned business person. I got a little gray hair, so I teach the business management and strategy book and the training development book currently. Kathy Graham is our internal benefits expert, subject matter expert, so she teaches the benefits portion. She'll tell you more about healthcare reform than you ever wanted to know. And then Kenny Colbert is another one of our internal seasoned HR experts, and so he will be talking about employee relations. He has also worked in unionized environments, so he is going to teach the labor relations part. And then part of what I think is also really fun about having that team of instructors is instead of having the same instructor week after week after week going through all this content, it gives you a little bit of variety. We all have different styles. We've all got different areas of expertise. It makes it a little bit more fun and engaging than listening to one person week after week after week. And I will tell you, with this large of a body of knowledge, it is hard for one instructor to be an expert in everything. So we really do like our team approach. We do ask our participants every semester, what did you think about that? Would you rather have one person? And usually 1 out of 30 or 40 people will say, I'd rather have one person, because they pick a favorite. But most people really like the team approach. We've been doing this for a long time, and I do always smile at it. Just because you've been the longest and the oldest doesn't mean you're the best, but I do think it does give us some clout of we really know what we really know what we're doing because we've been doing this for a long time. We've got over 1,000 people that we've taught. We've been doing this for over 20 years. And then next you look at our pass rates. So take a look at this. For TEA study course, 85% PHR, 84% SPHR. That number hovers in the mid to high 80s, sometimes a little bit over 90 if you look at each semester, but cumulative over 20 years, we've kept a really high pass rate, especially look at that next bullet point. If you compare to the national pass rate, it's really low, 50 to 51%. That was the most recent semester that HRCI measured, and I'm talking here about the PHR, SPHR, 50 to 51%. I do think that part of why that rate is really low is that includes people who do self-study That includes people who do those crash courses. They really don't work very well. So I do recommend a study course, absolutely, when you look at those differences. I don't have a slide about the SHRM certification pass rates, but you can go look at SHRM's website and find those. Ballpark figure, when I looked at their most recent numbers, the SHRM CP, which is the equivalent to the PHR, their pass rate nationally is almost 70%. If you look at the SHRM SCP, which is the equivalent to the SPHR, it's more like 60%. Now, what else does that tell you? I do think that the SHRM exams are perhaps a little bit easier as well. I can't guarantee it. I haven't taken them. I do have my designation, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But we did think that it might be that those exams would be a little bit easier because, again, they're allowing non-exempt, more entry-level professionals take them. They're probably a little bit easier. Easier does not necessarily mean better, right? It just is something I want you to know that can be a point of distinction for folks. And one thing I wanted to mention to you, too, if you look at the SHRM website, and you do see that they've got a large number of people certified in a really short period of time, you may think, how did that happen? They've got over, I think, over 100,000 people certified. When SHRM first came out with their new designations, they allowed anyone who already had their PHR or their SPHR to take a tutorial and get their SHRM certification. So you see that the TEA team, we all did that. We all already had our PHR and our SPHR. We took the tutorial, we got our SHRM designation. So that's part of how they have so many people already certified. And you basically couldn't fail. If you got the wrong answer with your first answer, you got to answer it the second time, you got to answer it a third time if you missed the question. So I'm a little bit cynical about the fact that we all got that, but at the same time, I understand they wanted to get a bunch of people certified so that would be considered equivalent. All right, next, going back to our study course here at the Employers Association, to tell you a little bit about it, I mentioned to you, you need to know what materials are used. You see there, we use a third party called HRCI, and we've been using them as a partner for over 20 years for prep study course books. We chose not to buy the SHRM materials years ago. We always bought a set for our instructors, but the HRCP books were more comprehensive, and so we chose to keep going with those. You also get flashcards, which are awesome. Some of you may be auditory learners, and some of you may be visual learners, and so it's great to have different tools available for you, but the flashcards are very helpful. We also have a different set of flashcards if you take the aPHR study course. We also give you a very thick binder with those study guides I mentioned earlier. Those are, again, not designed to be like the test. They're designed to help you study and learn the materials. Those are proprietary. We create those and update those every year ourselves. And then we give you a flash drive that has a bunch of links to commonly asked questions and some other resources. If you take our study course, you do get access to online practice exams. So you will get a personalized code, and you can take it anywhere you've got internet access. So if you want to take a practice exam at work, if you want to go to Starbucks, wherever you've got good internet connection, you can take a practice exam. And we really highly recommend that you do that. Take practice exams. We give you test-taking tips. And then I had mentioned earlier that we do have some additional resources available through the Employers Association. If you are a member, I hope you're already using a portal through our website called HR Answers Now. It is something that you access through the members-only section of our website, and it has a ton of HR research material. So if, let's say you're taking a study course and you don't really know that much about FMLA, there's a lot in the study material, but if you want to read more, you can go to HR Answers Now, look up FMLA, and read even more about it. So, and as you're doing your study guides, you've read your book, and now you're answering your questions. You may come again across a concept you want to know more about, or you can't find the answer in the book. You can go to HR Answers Now and know that you're going to be getting good content. You can Google it, of course, but that's going to take you longer, and you may or may not get good information. All right, this is a little snapshot for the PHR, SPHR of the schedule. But part of why I do like to show this is to let you know if you do decide to take this class, we actually start with Book 2 when we do that. And sometimes people wonder, why do you do that? Well, Book 2 is the one that is about recruiting and hiring and a lot of the employment laws. that is more familiar content for most people. So we ease you into the class by having you start with book 2. We actually encourage you to get the book in advance and do your study guide in advance. So the first night of class, you are ready to start with book 2. There is so much material. We want you to be prepared before that first night so we can get going. And then the next book we go back to is book 1, because that is more of the SPHR content. For some people, it is not very familiar content. So we do that a little bit after you get started, and then you'll see we go in the order that's listed there. And then there's a little reminder about coming in early the week of April 4th to do Jeopardy, and then the last night of class. So that's the schedule. I'll show the aPHR schedule again in a moment. I also like to point out to people that there are, as you saw, the statistics show some people don't pass. It is not a measure of how great you are at your job. So please, if you take the test and you do not pass, do not let it get you down too much. If it doesn't mean that you're not good at your job, it means that on that day with that test, you weren't able to answer enough questions correctly. I will say you're welcome to come back. So if you take a study course at TEA, we do offer a free refresher course the next semester. So if you take the class this winter and you do not pass, you can come back in the fall at no charge. If you do decide to wait 3 years and come back, we may say, well, you got to buy new books, so we got to charge you a little something to come back. But we do allow that free refresher course, and I'm not sure if that's something available through other study courses that are available local, but something to ask about. But you can take the exams again. And if there is anybody in the audience who already has their PHR and you're thinking about taking the leap to take the SPHR, good news for you is that you will not lose your PHR if you do not pass the SPHR, as long as you keep up your continuing education requirements. But if you don't have either, then you have to decide which one you want to take. If you want to know more about the PHR, SPHR, aPHR, go to the HRCI website. There's a lot more information there available for you. There's a handbook. You can download a PDF, and it will answer likely any questions that you have. Also on that website, you will find some practice tests. So they will let you take a couple of questions for free. So if you want to go online, pick an exam level, take a couple of quick questions, it'll give you a sense of what it's like. If you want to take the full practice exams that they have available, there's a small fee for that, but I highly recommend them. HRCI is the only resource out there that has actual retired exam questions. If you Google sample PHR questions, you are going to find all kinds of different resources that sell different practice tests, but please know that the only one that are actually retired questions are from HRCI. So I recommend them. It's a relatively small investment to get some more practice. And then there are different apps available. So if those of you out there love your smartphones and you're in the line at the grocery store, you can download an app and take some practice questions. We don't endorse any particular app because we haven't vetted any of them. But if you take our class, we'll tell you about some of them that you can check out, or you can Google that yourself as well, or look in the Apple Store or the Android Store and see what's out there for you. And then again, if you're interested in the SHRM certifications, go to the SHRM website. They have a very comprehensive website that can tell you more about those options. If you are interested in one of the study courses here at the Employers Association, go to the website, look at the training section. Under the search function, just type in PHR, SPHR, aPHR, and it will pull up that website page. You'll see a full course outline. You'll see the details of the cost, the dates, etc., or you're welcome to call us. And likewise, again, if you do have questions after the end of this session, we're going to do a little chat section here for a few minutes, and then you're welcome to call us or email us anytime between now and before the study courses start. So that wraps up my presentation. I am now going to open it up, so if you all would like to And that cost here is $950 for members. And if you are a non-member, the standard price is $1,000 for that study course. So this is the PHR, and then here you'll see the date. If you click the button, you'll see the time, 5 to 8, 12 weeks, $950, $1,000, and then click the button here if you're interested in registering. If you are a member, make sure that you're logged in. It will automatically give you the member rate. If you are not logged in, it will give you the non-member rate. If you're not sure if you're logged in or if you have an account, then you can go back up further and set up a website account. So go back to this Join Today, Create Online Account, create your member website account, and then log in, and you'll get the member rate. It will also ask you that when you go through the registration process. You can look at a full course outline here if you want to learn more about it, see a couple of testimonials, etc. I'm going to hit the back button, and now we're going to look at the aPHR. Some of you may be interested in that. We're going to click Learn More, go to the aPHR class, starts March 2nd, 5 weeks, and then here's the price. $500 for members, $550 for non-members. All right, I think I've got another question here. We are recording this webinar, and so we will send you a link if you would like to participate in the webinar if you attended late. All right, let me see if there are any other questions. All right. If anybody has any more questions, type in real quick. Well, I believe I have been very comprehensive and answered your questions through the presentation. But again, feel free to email us, call us, and we will send out a link to the webinar if you'd like to share this with any friends or colleagues. We really appreciate your time. I hope you will consider participating in one of our study courses or one of the other local groups, and or come to our other practical training certificate programs. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you soon.